Welcome to Nostalgia Sauce, where we're sparking up memories of 90s electronics that aimed high but fell short. Today, we're diving into the tech time capsule, revisiting gadgets that defined a generation. Join us for a quick trip down memory lane, exploring the highs and lows of innovative electronics that didn't quite make the cut. Stick around, because there's a surprising tech twist waiting for you at the end. Number 1. Sega Saturn. When it came out in 1994, the Sega Saturn had a lot of problems that made it fail in the market. Because it came out early without warning, makers didn't have many games ready for launch. The complicated architecture also made it hard to make games, so there weren't as many good games as on rivals like Sony's PlayStation. It was also hard to use because it was expensive at first and there weren't any good marketing tactics. People were interested in the PlayStation's 3D features and large selection of games, which made it hard for the Sega Saturn to gain a competitive edge. Because of these things and the fact that Sony and Nintendo were becoming more popular, the Saturn failed in the very competitive game console market of the 1990s. Number 2. Apple Newton. When Apple released the Newton in 1993, it was a bold but flawed attempt to enter the market for personal digital assistants, PDAs. Its main selling point, handwriting recognition, turned out to be incorrect and unreliable, making a lot of users angry. The Newton was also very expensive, which kept many people from buying it. The Newton had to compete with simpler, cheaper PDAs in a field that was still very new. Apple stopped making the Newton in 1998, which showed that it wasn't popular enough with most people. Even though the Apple Newton was a pioneering device that had an impact on personal technology, its early exit showed how hard it can be to bring new ideas to a tech world that is always changing. Number 3. Virtual Boy. When Nintendo released the Virtual Boy in 1995, they wanted it to change the way people played games by using virtual reality. However, its one-color monitor that gave off red light made users uncomfortable and tired their eyes. The system's flaws, like not having full-color graphics, made the virtual reality experience less engaging than it could have been. Also, the design, which required people to look through a headset that was sitting on a stand, made it hard to move around and made it impossible to play for long periods of time. It wasn't very popular because the Virtual Boy was expensive, didn't have many games, and competitive systems like the Sony PlayStation came out at the same time. Nintendo quickly took down the Virtual Boy in 1996, marking it as an early, innovative, but unsuccessful try at virtual reality gaming. Number 4. Atari Jaguar. The Atari Jaguar was the first 64-bit gaming console and came out in 1993. It was meant to change the gaming business forever. Even though it was very good at technology, the Jaguar had problems that made it fail in the market. Because making games for the system was hard, third-party makers didn't want to do it, so the library was small. Marketing plans also had trouble getting across the console's benefits clearly. The Jaguar's high price compared to rivals like the Sony PlayStation and Sega Saturn made it even harder for people to buy. The Atari Jaguar didn't have any innovative features, like a CD add-on, so it couldn't compete in the very competitive game market. All of these things caused it to stop making games in 1996, which ended Atari's hopes of becoming a major player in the home gaming system market. Number 5. Sony Data Discman. The portable electronic book player, released in 1992, sought to revolutionize reading with digital information. The Data Discman failed due to the high price, restricted availability of electronic books, and the rise of more adaptable portable devices. Although innovative, it failed to garner widespread adoption, underscoring the challenges of introducing new technology in a rapidly changing consumer electronics market. Now, before we get to number 6 of our 90s tech journey, take a moment to reflect. What's an electronic device from the good old days that you genuinely miss? Drop a comment below and let's share some nostalgic tech memories. And hey, if you're vibing with the trip down memory lane, give this video a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and stay tuned for more blasts from the past. Let's get back to it. Coming in at number 6, 3DO Interactive Multiplayer. When it came out in 1993, the 3DO Interactive Multiplayer was meant to change the way people played games by using cutting-edge technology and multimedia features. However, there are several reasons why it didn't do well in the market. The ridiculously high price of $699 for the 3DO at launch made it much more expensive than other systems. The high cost kept many people from adopting. It also failed because it didn't have any exclusive, must-have games and its library wasn't as big as other platforms. The 3DO was even less popular because gamers wanted cheaper choices with more interesting games, like the Sony PlayStation. Because of these problems and changes in the gaming industry, the 3DO was taken off the market in 1996, ending an interesting but failed chapter in the history of video games. Number 7. Sony MiniDisc Player. When Sony released the MiniDisc Player in the early 1990s, it was meant to be a portable and rewritable digital music player. Even though it used new technology, the MiniDisc Player had a number of problems that kept it from being a big hit. The format had to compete with CDs and new MP3 players, but Sony's proprietary method made it harder for other devices to work with it. At first, both players and minidiscs were very expensive, and there were a lot of CD burners around, which made the minidisc seem less useful and cost-effective. People wanted easier to use and more flexible audio options, which is why the minidisc player had a hard time becoming popular. It was a product that didn't live up to what the market expected. Number 8. Amiga CD32. When it came out in 1993, the Amiga CD32 had problems that kept people from buying it. Even though the CD32 was the first 32-bit game console, it had a hard time competing with Sega and Nintendo. Commodore's market penetration was slowed by legal fights with its creditors and rivals. A lack of exclusive games and a small library of games for the system kept people from buying it in large numbers. The CD32 didn't do very well because of delays in production and money problems at Commodore. When Commodore went bankrupt in 1994, support for the machine dropped, and it was eventually taken off the market. The Amiga CD32 had a lot of promise, but problems inside and outside of Amiga made it a short and unsuccessful part of gaming history. Number 9. Sega 32X. When it came out in 1994, the Sega 32X had a lot of problems that made it fail in the market. The 32X, which was meant to be an add-on for the Sega Genesis, had trouble with customers being confused and not having enough interesting games. When Sega switched to the Sega Saturn and Sega CD, it broke up its game ecosystem. People were turned off by the 32X's high price and the fact that the Sega Saturn was about to come out. A small collection of exclusive games wasn't enough to make the investment worthwhile, and the 32X quickly fell out of favor when newer Sega systems came out. All of these things made it hard for the 32X to compete in the mid-1990s game market, which was very competitive. As promised, a surprise in tech. Number 10. Apple Pippin. Apple's first attempt at a game console, the Apple Pippin, which came out in 1996, had numerous problems that could not be solved. Despite being co-designed with Bandai, the Pippin had a hard time because it was expensive, didn't have many games, and had to compete with more popular gaming systems. The system's identity crisis, it tried to be both a game machine and a network computer, made users confused. Its high making costs made it expensive to buy, which kept many people from using it. Since third-party developers weren't supported and the market was already controlled by big names, the Apple Pippin didn't manage to get a foothold. It was Apple's first attempt at making a game device, but the Pippin didn't last long and didn't do well. Well, that was quite the ride through 90s tech. If you enjoyed the trip, hit that like button, subscribe for more throwback tech moments, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support means a lot. Thanks for joining us on this tech time travel. Check out our channel for more nostalgia.